us to learn ay dapat gets mo, gets ko, at gets natin to with your baguette speaker, Mr. Hubert A. Torrentira. Good afternoon everyone who participates this virtual symposium. It is my honor and great privilege to be one of your resource speaker in this significant event. This afternoon, I will make sure na dapat gets mo, gets ko, at gets natin to this topic that I will be presenting to you. At wala nang pagpaligoy-ligoy pa, let's talk about the norm reference interpretation. What is norm reference interpretation? Mr. Baguettes, gets mo ba? Norm reference interpretation is one of the type of test score interpretation which main aim is to measure the hinges on the purpose of assessment. The term norm originated from the Latin word norma, which means precept or rule. By this definition, it is pertaining to the average test score on the test. What is the main function of norm reference interpretation? Norm reference interpretation compare a student's scores to a range of previously observed performance, usually the performance of other students. How much the student knows is determined by his or her ranking or his or her position in a norm group or the group of reference. For example, we will rank the 6th graders. Remember, if we will rank the 6th graders, only 6th graders are included. Other year levels are excluded because 6th graders is our group of reference. And another purpose of norm reference interpretation is to discriminate the high and the low achievers. Because, of course, we are ranking these students who got higher score and the lower score. What's more on about norm reference interpretation? We will always remember that the percentile rank and the standard scores are common in the norm reference interpretation. Remember, the percentile rank and the standard scores are common in norm reference interpretation. For example, to say that a child placed 8 in a reading class. So in this example, we can say that we are ranking the performance of this child compared to the performance of his or her classmate or the persons within that group of reference. So maybe there's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th, or 4th and so on in that particular group of reference, and that child is in the 8th place. Then we are ranking the performance of the child. Another is the child's score in a reading assessment at the 85th percentile. So remember that this means that the child scored better than the 85% of the students in the group. So we are using the standard scores and the percentile rank in the norm reference interpretation. What are the assessment instruments using norm reference interpretation? The screening, diagnosis, and the outcome assessment are interpreted in a normative fashion. The standardized aptitude and achievement test, the teacher survey made test, the interest and adjustment inventories are also part of it. We are using the norm reference interpretation in interpreting the scores of the students who take the test. And we will always remember that in using the normative fashion, we were able to differentiate the students because we are ranking them based their performance in relation to the performance of others, and at the same time the school can determine what are those necessary things required or needed for that students with their particular ranking or position within the group of reference.
What are the guidelines in interpreting norm reference test scores?
According from Netco and Brocard 2011, there are 5 guidelines in interpreting non-reference test scores. First, detect any unexpected patterns of scores. As teacher, we need to look out for unusual, especially the extreme scores. If the student's test scores does not confirm on our observation to that particular student, then we need, as teachers, to reflect on our instructions. That's the first one. Next is determine the reasons for score patterns. So we cannot deny that there are factors why the students are underperforming in the subject or other subject and any subjects. Maybe it's because they have learning disabilities. If we remember the dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and many more. Or simply, they are just lack of motivation. So we need to determine that reasons. That's number 2. And number 3, do not expect surprises for every student. So as teachers already observe the students, we already know, we already observe the pattern, the trend of their, the way they perform, their performances, or their test scores. So we do not need to expect beyond on that, because we already know how the students perform in the class.
Number 4, small differences in subject scores should be viewed as chance fluctuations.
The different test scores will be or may not subject for any intervention. Example, these test scores have greater difference compared to others which have lower. But still, our intervention depends if we really meet the objectives we targeted on a particular assessment or the topic that we assessed. And last one, use information for various and observation to explain performance on the assessment. So example, it is not shocking for us teachers who already know that students is not good or poor in writing Filipino and English to have low score in essay writing, of course. I guess that's the content of my presentation this afternoon. I hope that gets more, gets go, and gets not into the topic that I already presented. I hope that you learned something. Thank you and God bless everyone.